Hello, everybody. Nice to be here with you talking about age diversity and why it's important. Thanks to AJ for introducing us. I'm Heather Tinsley-Fix, and I lead employer engagement work at AARP. And so I'd like to talk about age diversity with you, and particularly why it is important from a business in a business context. So a couple of points. First, just in general, age diversity is good for business on a number of fronts. For one thing, team diversity, so age diversity at the team level, drives greater productivity and better performance. And this actually, as a diversity element, outperforms sort of other elements of diversity at the team level, which is sort of mysterious and also very interesting. And some of the sort of working theories are that age diversity at the team level promotes knowledge spillover, right? So the kind of tacit knowledge that you absorb by talking to older people and gaining from their experience. So that's one reason that age diversity is really good for business. Another is that in industries where there's a lot of turnover, thinking particularly of technology and roles, so technology roles, technology industry, a good mix of ages helps to stabilize that level of turnover because older workers tend to stay a little bit longer. Mid-career workers tend to stay a little bit longer than early career workers. And finally, it's good for innovation and creativity. All diversity, as you know, is good for sparking new solutions, and age diversity is definitely part of that. It's useful for tapping into what's going to be a very rich longevity economy. You can check out AARP's work on that, but the 50 plus have an immense buying power. And so that is a market that's good to tap into, and it's good to have age diversity and older people along with mid-career and younger people working on those kinds of solutions and products that are valuable to the market. But in particular, with regard to manufacturing, I've been reading through a really great report from the Manufacturing Institute from last year on the aging of the workforce, and wanted to note a couple of things for the manufacturing industry in terms of age diversity. One of the things is that the labor market in general is aging. There are currently 5 generations in the workforce, right? So everybody from Gen Z all the way through the greatest generation. There's a few of those folks left. And so that is a good mix of diversity already, but in particular, the composition of the workforce is getting older. So by 2024, I think 35% of the workforce will be 50 plus. That's a big chunk of the workforce. And next year, starting in January, the first millennials will turn 40. So the workforce is aging. In the manufacturing industry, the median age is even a little higher than in other industries or in the workforce in general. So in 2018, the median age of a manufacturing worker was 44, whereas the median age of a US worker in general was 42. So the most manufacturers that this report sort of interviewed and spoke to, in fact, the majority of them, I think like 97%, really value their older workers, which is great, music to our ears, right? We love to hear that. They value their older workers for the immense body of tacit knowledge, institutional knowledge and technical knowledge, and expertise of processes that they've developed over time. And on the flip side, I know there's been some challenges in terms of recruiting younger people and getting younger people into the talent pool. And so that's one element of sort of consideration when you're thinking about diversity and inclusion strategies in your organizations, how to bring younger folks in and how to retain your older workers and really leverage them to mentor the younger ones and to provide that, that handoff of knowledge and that handoff of that experience. So knowledge retention and knowledge transfer is another big sort of element of age diversity in the manufacturing world. And I'm really excited to talk to our 2 panelists about this, the kind of best practices that they use for that, because it is so important. And it's hard to transfer tacit knowledge, right? So it's easier to sort of document processes, but less easy to transfer that tacit knowledge that's gained just from years of being on the line. And so I think that's all I wanted to say about those 2 elements. I really want to get into the discussion. So before I do, though, we're going to hand it off to Hannah Kane to talk a little bit about this topic at her organization. Hannah.
Thank you so much, Heather. And my name is Hannah Kane, and I'm President and CEO of ALOM. We are a global light contract manufacturer supply chain company working out of 19 locations globally. And we are great believers in diversity, and that is on all dimensions, but certainly age being a very important dimension. So let's start with the most pragmatic reason for why anybody should really be for diversity, which is we have a talent crisis. We have a problem recruiting the people we actually need. Even with in a pandemic, where we have pandemic unemployment, it's hard for us to recruit the right people, and it's hard for us to recruit with specific skills. We are in an industry where it's just really, really tough to find the correct talent. And so we want the broadest possible talent pool. And that includes, of course, people who are of a certain age. The other reason we are looking is, of course, that we want to retain the people who are getting into an age where they're thinking about retirement, and so we have. Somebody made the cutoff. I think in the report that Heather mentioned, the cutoff is 55 years. Over 55 years is considered old. It's not an age level I agree with, I want to say, on a personal basis. But if we go by that, then about a third of our workforce falls into that category. And of course, we want to retain them and figure out a way to make them happy work and take advantage of their skills. And then, of course, there's a diversity of thought. And when I say diversity of thought, it's not just the way people are, what people are thinking, but how they're thinking about problems. And I always feel that that is one of the biggest cases for diversity, whether age or other dimensions, is to get that diversity of thought into the workplace. And finally, we have a lot of good experience with the hiring and retaining people who are in their 60s or even older. And part of it is that they are very stable workforce, and Heather mentioned that. So a lot of people think, okay, I hire somebody who is a very young person, they'll stay forever. Well, we have what's called job mobility. So you know, nobody says that they'll stay forever. So in any event, there's a lot of good business cases for age diversity, and I look forward to the discussion and seeing if we can unravel some of the things that where we can help everybody use some tools that we have developed. So on to Lisa. I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are around this topic.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. And I totally agree. I mean, age diversity is a conversation that we don't hear that often. And in manufacturing, it's so important, because I think that the reason that our age bracket is 44 as an average age is because we have so many baby boomers. So Winch & Machine is a smaller manufacturing company. We build industrial factory automation. And so as such, we have to have people of varied skill sets. And so we have varied ages within those skill sets. And so some of our machinists, for instance, are manual machinists. And it's a very difficult thing to find now in this generation, in the Gen Z generation, to find people who want to be manual machinists, because they all want to be CNC, they want to program, they want to use computers, they want things to be simple. And you have to kind of start with the fundamentals. And so even if you're, for instance, a CNC machinist, you need to learn the fundamentals of manual processes. And so I think that's one of the really great things about having a diversity of age ages within your workforce is that you can learn from one another. So our older generations can learn a lot from our younger generations, as well as the younger generation learning from the older generation. And I look forward to our discussion and how this brings so much to the table and helps with what we call the brain drain nowadays. And it just helps our companies and our organizations be more viable for the future.
Thanks, Lisa and Hannah. That's definitely encouraging to hear, and I want to get into the discussion. So the first question I want to ask is, why is hiring a multi-generational workforce such an important part of your talent development? It sounds like we've already kind of been answering that question, and I was wondering if you could talk a little more about examples you've had where there's two-way learning going on, right? Where older workers are energized by learning from younger workers and vice versa, and how that increases things like engagement and retention and loyalty.
So one of the things we do as part of our diversity efforts is to encourage everybody to mentor somebody who doesn't look like them. And that could be age-wise, it could be gender-wise, it could be racial, it could be a number of other diversity dimensions. And so you'll get this cross-generational mentorship going, and I believe that has been proven very, very effective. So one of the things we learned here during the pandemic is how important it is to listen and understand what's going on. And the listening has got to go always, right? And I believe once you get into a mentorship role, then that really helps. So maybe I can share a little bit how I think about diversity. So I think sort of on the very bottom level, you prevent discrimination. It's a very, very, very basic. Then you go and you remove the barriers. So that could be for age, population, lack of light, or physical barriers of different type. Then you go and you think about inclusion. What does inclusion mean? How do I get everybody included in everything? And that includes, of course, the listening part. And finally, you go and you attack the unconscious bias. And so sort of, and that is really the hardest part, because we all carry it around, right? And you really start with yourself and then get it out there. And that's a framework I'm using for how to think about it, and happy to elaborate, but I want to hear what Lisa is doing too. So over to you.
So, I think, I think you've covered a lot of ground there. So I'd rather just go in with an example. So I'll just use an example in our electrical department. One of our key folks that has been with us for a really long time, he came to us as a retiree. So he's been with us for many years, and he retired from the company he worked for 30 years. And then he came on to work for us, and I don't think he's probably been working for us for about 15 years. And he works about 30 hours a week. So it's a great flexible schedule. And that's one of the things I think a lot of our aging workforce is looking for. They're not necessarily working for a 40-hour-a-week job. So if you can give them flexibility, I think that's really helpful. So with that, some of the other folks in the electrical department are young, I call them kids, but they're young men. And one in particular came from our technical high school in our area, and he came out of their program. And so he came into us kind of as an apprentice. And one of the other gentlemen, he's also very young. They're both, in the early 20s. And so they've been able to work with the employee that's a little bit older, and they've learned so much from him. And also another one of the electrical folks who's an electrician, actually, and he's really been mentoring him not only within the organization, but I think personally as well. So I think we don't talk enough about how the older generation can also mentor, not only in the work environment, but bring in those personal experiences and help them. I mean, 21 years old, and he just bought a house. I don't think he ever would have done that if he hadn't come to work for us and had the mentorship that he had and the encouragement from other employees.
Yeah, I love that story, because it shows that when you not only learn sort of the work stuff, but also the personal stuff, and so often soft skills are the kinds that take time to develop, and those tend to be the hardest to recruit for. I know that from PwC's annual CEO survey last year. They're really important and really hard to find, and so that's a great way that you've been mentioning, Lisa, to leverage your older workers. We're so tight on time, but I want to ask, what are some of the myths about the different generations? My personal pet peeve is I hate it when people say that millennials are lazy, because I know I have so many millennial colleagues and they work really hard. What are some other myths about generations and ages and what do you guys do to dispel them?
I think that's a really good question because, a lot of times people who are younger look at the older people as they're slow, but sometimes they're methodical. So that's something that's really, I think, is speed, because we want our employees to be quick enough for efficiencies, because we measure efficiencies in manufacturing. At the same time, we want them to be careful, because sometimes the younger generation doesn't understand that, they just want to speed through it and get it done, but they don't understand then you make the mistakes and what it costs the company later on, and looking at the bigger picture. So I think that the way that we look at things from an efficiency standpoint is very interesting when you look at cross-generational and you look at speeds. And I think also a lot of the younger people think that the older people don't really understand the computers, they understand the technology. And then the older people don't take note of how important that technology is. So I think there's a lot of things that go back and forth. And right now, not to get into the COVID, huge COVID discussion, but for me, that's a huge thing right now, is how you handle in a manufacturing environment your diversity of ages, and how you handle COVID and what their thought processes around that issue are. And so that's been a huge challenge for us.
So one of the things I was shocked to see when I looked at the survey that Heather, and the report that Heather was referring to earlier, was a third of all the companies said, well, why bother educate the people in the age groups over 55? And I'm thinking, what are they thinking? Right? So of course you've got to do that. So one of the things we do is everybody gets opportunity to do, we started something called ALUM University. Everybody gets an opportunity to do, of course, training for their job relevant training, but also training for personal development. And I think the type of people I like to hire like to continue to learn all the time, independent of age group. And I think that's one of the big misses. People are going to retire really soon, and we don't need to train them. Both of them are horrific myths.
Yes, I so love to hear that. And our research backs that up as well. A huge majority of people over the age of 45, when surveyed, said that the opportunity to learn something new was a really important part of their job satisfaction. So definitely don't listen to that old bunk that older workers don't want to learn, because they do. Well, we are out of time. I'm so sorry, because I have so many more questions for you guys. I'm really interested in how automation has affected sort of team structure and on the manufacturing floor and all that, but we don't have time. It would be great to continue the conversation in 2021. I'd like to definitely commend to you all this report from last year about the aging workforce by the Manufacturing Institute, because it has so many great practical examples and actionable steps you can take. So I want to make sure that you know about that. And with that, I'll just close out. Thank you so much, Lisa and Hannah, and thanks to the Manufacturing Institute for hosting this section, or this session on age diversity. And we will kick it back over to you, AJ.
Thank you.
Thank you.